Welcome to the American Story. Stories about all the things that make America the country we know and love. The country we give thanks for every day, and especially on the fourth Thursday of every November. This year, on this occasion, I hope you will join me in praying for our country and its great cause of liberty. This is Chris Flannery with the Claremont Institute, wishing you and yours a very happy Thanksgiving. I call this one Sara Josepha Hale. I had never heard of Sara Josepha Hale until my much better half recently called to my attention a new book about her by Melanie Kirkpatrick. There I learned that she was an American born in Newport, New Hampshire in 1788, just a few months after New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify the U.S. Constitution, making it the supreme law of the land among those 9 states. In an era when the average American life expectancy was 40 years, she lived until 1879, 91 years, and has been remembered by posterity primarily for 2 things: the poem popularly known as Mary Had a Little Lamb, and the American tradition of Thanksgiving. Like generations of American 4- and 5-year-olds before me, I learned early in life that Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. But I never knew or was curious to learn who had written the poem. As a child, these nursery rhymes seemed to come to one as part of the natural order of things. They were just there, and one assumed they always had been there. But now I learned that the poem was first published in the Juvenile Miscellany in 1830 under its original title, Mary's Lamb. To say, as Hale's new biographer does, that the lines of this poem are more universally recognizable than anything even Shakespeare wrote seems possibly to be stretching things a bit. But I am perfectly willing to believe that they have been translated into just about every language known to modern man, from Armenian to Zulu. That most American children today do not have a lamb as a pet may be cause for celebration or regret, but it does seem to be true. This is probably the main reason why it is not widely known that sheep are notoriously bad mothers. This seems to run against all decent sentiment, but it too is true. For reasons unknown to animal husbandry, or at least to me, mother sheep often wander off and leave their young ones without adult supervision, sometimes even without dinner. It is just such abandoned young lambs that often did, just a few generations ago, become the friends of the young children who were assigned to look after them on the farm. So children and parents in Sara Josepha Hale's time would have been perfectly familiar with the thought of a little lamb following its young friend to school one day. Hale's father served 4 years in the Continental Army in the American Revolutionary War, and he passed along to his daughter a profound love of country. She was an American patriot all her long and productive life, and early came to the view that military and political victory alone could not perpetuate the revolution in the coming generations of this new sovereign people. Distinctively American personal, familial, social, and cultural habits were needed, she thought, and wives and mothers would play a decisive role in shaping this new American way of life. This concern is what led Hale in 1847 to launch a campaign for a National Thanksgiving Day. Here's how Melanie Kirkpatrick sums up Hale's effort. On October 3, 1789, George Washington issued the first ever presidential Thanksgiving proclamation. 74 years and 15 presidents later, Abraham Lincoln became the second president to ask all Americans to come together to celebrate a day of national Thanksgiving. The thread between Washington's Thanksgiving Day and Lincoln's was Sara Josepha Hale. Hale didn't invent the American festival Thanksgiving, but it was thanks to her that the holiday became a permanent fixture on the American calendar. Aside from her almost universally known nursery rhyme and her contribution to making Thanksgiving a national holiday, Sara Josepha Hale made herself one of the most influential women of the 19th century. Her influence came from her position as editor for over 50 years of 2 popular women's magazines, one of them the most widely circulated magazine of the pre-Civil War period, and one of the first publications to circulate nationwide. In addition to her magazine editing, she herself wrote, edited, or contributed to over 100 books and wrote hundreds of poems, short stories, and articles for magazines, in addition to hundreds of columns for her own magazines. Her magazines informed readers all across America how Americans cooked, ate, dressed, and raised their children, what poetry and literature they were writing and reading. At a time when only half of American women could read and women were only beginning to be admitted into institutions of higher learning, she made it her central mission to promote education for women. But one of the most remarkable things about Sara Josepha Hale was how she began this journey. It was 1822. She was 33 years old, penniless and in debt. Her lawyer husband, with whom she had been very happily married, had died from pneumonia caught in a freak September snowstorm. She was now a widow with 5 children to support and educate. She was embarrassingly deemed insolvent by a probate court. This was a time before women could go to college, work as public school teachers, practice medicine, or even manage their own money. But 6 years later, she moved to Boston and took up her first job as editor. From the time of her husband's death in 1822 until her own in 1879, she wore widow's black. Above all her accomplishments, she always considered her life's finest achievement providing the best education available to her 3 sons and 2 daughters, the kind of education she knew her husband would have wanted them to receive, and which she hoped would equip them to perpetuate the great American Revolution. Thanks for being part of the American Story. This is Chris Flannery with the Claremont Institute. I encourage you to visit our website, theamericanstorypodcast.org, to learn more about these stories and how you might support them. That's theamericanstorypodcast.org.